The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hoop Ballers! Welcome back to Today in Sports Betting. Happy Friday to you. It is that time. It's Friday, May 15th, 2020. And this is Today in Sports Betting, a hoop-ball.com presentation, a part of the Hoop Ball Fantasy Basketball family pages. There's also Hoop Ball Gaming, that is the creator of this said podcast. You can find that at Hoop Ball Gaming on Twitter. I'm DALE007, Devin Ellington in real life. And today, I am joined by someone that's put numerous effective articles out there within the gambling industry. He's a phenomenal writer. On top of Harry Gagnon, who I sat down with earlier in the week, this gentleman is another one of the main proponents as to why I love sports betting as much as I do. His insight has helped me. And if you're familiar with this gentleman, which I'm sure you are, this is going to be really, really fun for you, just like it is for me. Adam, how are you doing today, buddy? With
I'm
Mr.
doing
Adam,
well, man. How you doing?
Adam Burke of Bang the Book. Yeah, I'm gonna try my hardest to get through this podcast. I'm smiling a little bit too much, so I'll cut that out a little bit, and we'll get rolling here and have a fun show. Hey, first of all, many thanks again. I know offline I've told you, but this is huge for me in the podcast, and I know I love it. Ira's a huge fan of you. My co-host Dan, our owner, he's familiar with your work, so this is. We are very thankful for it, and we're happy that you decided to grace the presence of the show with your presence. So with that being said, Adam, let's tell folks where they can find you on Twitter. It's Skating Tripod, correct?
Yes, sir. At Skating Tripods on Twitter. Everybody asks the story about how that Twitter handle came up, and I haven't played in about 6 years. I mean, if you could see the full body, you could tell why. But I haven't played hockey in a while, and that was our beer league team, the Skating Tripods, and we had a shocker for a logo, and we were really good at drinking and not so good at hockey, but the name lives on, I guess, through my Twitter persona, we'll call it.
Infamy.
There you go.
Yeah. So I don't think I've played a lick of hockey ever. I think I've played in the street a little bit as a kid, but I never went out and got on the ice or at a rink or whatever and played actual organized hockey. I guess it's the Oklahoman in me. It's a little different down in this part of the country where I grew up. So it's a little more lifeblood in the north for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my dad played in high school, so he just kind of passed on the love of the sport to me. And in fact, I actually didn't start playing competitively till my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
So I wasn't very good in high school is basically the point I'm making here. But, I got a good 10, 12 years out of playing, and I did some reffing for a while too. And
cool.
Some days I miss it. Most days I don't when my back acts up or something else. So it'd be nice to be able to play at a high level. I can't imagine what it's like to do something like that at just an extremely high, ridiculously elite level.
Right.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, just flying down like center ice, able to just control the puck and yourself, and just some of the stuff they do, the slap shots, the three-man weaves. I love hockey. The last couple of years, I've dug into it a lot more, especially with the birth of this podcast and my outside, my gambling endeavors and sports coverage desires. So hockey's a sport that I'm looking forward to returning and then like carrying on my viewership and fandom of. I wasn't ever like oblivious or negligent of the fact of what the NHL was or what, players or product was in it. But, I'd be foolish to say that I put more effort into that than like a college football or something at the time. But Now I'm starting to love it a lot more, just like college football or any other sport. But enough about me, Adam. You we talked a little bit about hockey. We got this northern feel kind of laid down for the listeners. So you grew up north in Ohio. I know you said you're in the Cleveland area now, but is that where you are rooted at? Is that where it all happened for you?
Yeah, born and bred here in Cleveland, and growing up, obviously, I mean, the Indians, that was the 90s heyday. So,
yeah.
Baseball was at the top of the list for me. It always has been, and quite frankly, it probably always will be. The Browns were good in the late 80s, early 90s, but I was too young to really remember that. And then, of course, they left for 5 years. So it was always about baseball for me. I never really got into basketball too much, at least not the Cavaliers, until, everybody got into them when they were able to draft LeBron.
Right.
But, Buckeyes fan, Indians fan, and then just, a general sports fan. And, kind of with the line of work that I'm in, the line of work I've been in since 2013, it's hard to have favorites. You can't really have a lot of favoritism. I don't even see favorite players anymore. I just mostly see numbers and situational spots and stuff like that. It's a very different kind of fandom, to say the least. But I've managed to hold on to the Indians and the Buckeyes specifically for college football.
Right. Yeah, I've always thought that the Cleveland area, and again, we talked off camera a little bit. I used to travel for work, so it was, I spent some time in Akron. I wish I would have spent some time more so in Cleveland. It's one of those. A lot of people, I think, feel that there's not culture there, but I think Cleveland has a lot of stuff to offer as far as modern Americana, past blue collar, Americana, and then like a good mesh balance between the two. Also leaving room for other, cultures and peoples of diversity to, coexist in that area. I enjoyed the time I spent up there. I was only there for 2 weeks, but I enjoyed it. Now, talking a little bit about your background information and kind of where you grew up, you're the lead writer for Bang the Book now, but how did the writing start? What was your did you go to school for journalism in college, or paint the picture for me, Adam?
Well, it's kind of funny that I would sort of find my way to sports betting, because there's a very rich sports betting tradition in the state of Ohio, mostly in the eastern part of the state, the Steubenville area. It was kind of, it's not halfway between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, but it's relatively close, in that sense. So there's always a lot of gambling that went on along the Ohio River over on the eastern border of the state. So I don't know, maybe it's just kind of ingrained in all of us Ohioans. A lot of us are degenerate gamblers. But for me, I've always been a writer. I've always loved writing. I was that weird kid in high school that liked English, liked writing papers, research papers, stuff like that. Always had an affinity for history too. So when I went to college, I went to Akron, and I majored in mass media communication, did a second major in history. So gambling and certainly the role that I currently have, it allows me to use both of those majors. I'm on air, I do the communication side, I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes in terms of, talking with affiliates and advertisers and whatnot. But when it comes to a history major, you're always proving a point. You're always trying to make a statement, provide the supporting evidence, and you really have to develop a strong argument over, 10, 12, 20, 25 pages, whatever the case may be. So when I got into sports betting, and my sophomore year roommate actually got me into it, it became very easy to write about it. That was in the early days of podcasting. I'd been doing some podcast stuff for a local Cleveland sports blog anyway. I was doing some gambling content on college football and the NFL for them. And then it just sort of became a thing where, I kind of fell into the community. I found a betting forum called Beyond the Bets in 2010. And, just information sharing. It was a lot different back then. Now you go to message boards and it's just, I played this, I played this, I played this. Then 27 replies of good luck. It was more of a community feel with that group. And in fact, I met people like Matt Lindemann, who's been in the industry for a long time in Las Vegas. Creature, who's our Parker Michaels, who's our NHL writer at bangthebook.com. And I've still kept in touch with a lot of those people. And, you know, that community feel kind of allowed me to feel accepted into sports betting as being something of an authoritative voice. And it's just kind of grown from there.
Well, I like that you said that because that's, kind of how I felt whenever I was working on getting myself into handicapping and looking at maybe having a future in this. So, it's funny how you take that principle of how you came into this industry and then how you allow it to be extended to other people that may be able to come into this in their own, after you. So, hey, kudos to that. I appreciate that because it's important to make sure people know that this is a community, an industry. Sure, it's a little intimidating at time because of, Vegas and all the stuff. But, we're all here to do the same thing, and that's make money and also enjoy sports at the same time. So now while we're in the process of thinking back and like we're, stuck right there where you were painting that picture with us, you briefly touched on the fact of kind of how sports betting was always around you. It's just kind of like in the tributaries there in Ohio. But if you were to think back, would you be able to recollect the first bet you placed?
Yeah. It's funny. Like I said, my sophomore year roommate got me into it. And ironically enough, the hockey connection, we were on an intramural floor hockey team together freshman year.
Yeah.
They also did intramural poker stuff. I still talk to him. He's actually still a pretty good friend of mine. But, he kind of mentioned to me what he was doing, kind of got started in it. He was a much bigger degenerate than I am. He actually decided to apply to Akron because they won a bet for him in the MAC championship game. I believe it was back in 04, 05. Decided to apply to Akron. All the places he got accepted to, he pulled the names out of a hat, and then Akron was the one that was left. He was actually from New England area, which is crazy. But anyway, so he got me into it, and, I started limited bankroll like a lot of people do, and I was doing the 3-team parlays across college basketball, $5 paying 6 to 1, get my $30 every so often. Went through some of that financial aid money. I ate a lot of ramen in college for a while there. But,
yeah,
it's look, everybody's got that story of starting out. And that's the important thing is to kind of, learn from your mistakes. And I found very early on that, parlays weren't for me because the return on investment, while it looks really attractive, it's hard to hit those.
Yeah.
I remember days where I'd get excited and tell my then girlfriend, now wife, about winning $42 on a parlay. And, it was the greatest thing that happened to me that week. And, that doesn't account for the lots of money I lost on the other parlays. So
right.
Everybody gets that start. Everybody kind of finds their way. And you find what works for you. You find a community that can help you look at things in a different way. And that's really when it turned for me, when I started to look at things more analytically and also have a group of people where we could break down games together, as opposed to me just, kind of going through and looking at things for myself.
Yeah, no, that's you and I share a lot of the same mindsets in that, because whenever I decided to start doing this, the way I looked at it is I like how you touched on the analytical stuff, because I've always thought that part of sports was really neat, just figuring out like how you can dissect that certain element of any sport. And so whenever I saw the allure of getting into gambling and such, I think what was so shiny about it to me was the fact that there was more numbers to break down. Like it was a little bit more analytics, and it was another piece of sports that you can use to fuel and feed kind of your interest as far as breaking stuff down. And that's what I like the most about it, is because it gives me another way, like, to see the sport in itself and break it down on different numbers. And so it's neat. Analytics were neat, but then when you actually put more numbers into it and such, it's very enjoyable. So those parlays, I want to go back on that because, we can talk a little bit about betting strategy. I've recently tweaked mine. And I actually can't remember the last time I played a parlay, but like you, starting off, like there's just nothing more than seeing those parlays where you got 2 of your 3 picks hitting and you're just waiting on that last one. And it's an exciting feeling. But like you said, losing on those other ones, it's hard to make up for it. So bankroll management is huge. And we've done a little bit of talk about that with some of the guests, just asking some basic questions, introduction to some stuff. So off the top of your head, Adam, if other than what you just said for your personal bankroll, what do you think like makes a successful bettor? Is it the determination of doing their research? Is it discipline? What do you think it would be?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I mean, I can give you a 6-hour answer on that one. And I think one of the biggest things is that you get a lot of people, and I don't want to criticize anybody. I mean, I learned the hard way starting out. It was always, for me, early in the process, well, I'm a sports fan. I watch sports. I can read game previews. I can even write game previews and game recaps, if I really wanted to. And that's what I thought betting was. I thought it was just, sort of looking at things kind of in a vacuum, stat comparisons with the two teams. And as you develop as a bettor, because there's a difference between betting and handicapping. I know you listen to my podcast, Bang the Book Radio. We've talked about that before. Handicapping is breaking down the game. Handicapping is looking at the stats, looking at the metrics, looking at the analytics. A lot of people are capable of doing that. I mean, we see that now with the way that sports betting is growing in the mainstream media, that a lot of people can break down games, break down angles, stuff like that. What you learn as you do this over a long period of time, and quite frankly, what I'm still learning after doing this for 12 or 13 years, the first 5 or 6 kind of recreationally, after that, doing the Bang the Book work, understanding the betting market is dramatically different. Knowing when to put your bet in, understanding where the lines are going to move. I'm not somebody who models, so I'm not calculating my exact edge. I'm not betting based on Kelly criterion or anything like that, but just having a feel for the market, having an idea of where the money is coming from, which side is the sharp side, which side is the public side, things of that sort. That's what really elevates you as a bettor and as somebody that actually has the opportunity to make money in this business, because there is a massive difference between handicapping and betting. I think a lot of people can do the handicapping part of it. It's the betting part that they struggle with, the bankroll management you referenced, knowing the value of a number, knowing the value of getting in at +7 instead of +6.5 for a football game, stuff like that. That's what you learn and develop, and that's what you continue to learn and develop, because the betting market is ever evolving. You've got different groups with different influence. You've got different sports books with different levels of risk tolerance. So you got to know where you can bet, when you can bet, who's betting what. It's a very, very nuanced and very complex kind of thing. And I think one of the problems a lot of early bettors make, myself included, and even to this day I still do it, I just look in a vacuum at the game that I'm handicapping, decide on the side that I like, and even sometimes I'll blind myself to that without looking at what's going on in the market or the price I'm actually getting.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that and glad you brought that up, because I remember not too long ago, when I was starting off in this, it was, I started hearing these terms like sharps and public and this side and that side. And whenever I started piecing together what all that really was and how to utilize that and what to look out for, granted, I'm still learning. None of us ever have it like locked down or, whatever. But I think what I like in that part of betting, the market itself and analyzing that, understanding where it may go as far as the ebb and the flow, I like how it's almost a game in itself in that aspect of when you're placing your bets. Because not only are you taking the information that you have for yourself, the research that you've done and maybe a matchup that you like on the card, but you also got to consider, hey, I know this is my number. I think this is what the public is doing. So if I just wait like a couple more hours, like I can get that extra hook or whatever that I really, really want to have, or vice versa, it can go either way. So I'm glad you touched on that. And
look, admittedly, I like handicapping the market more than I like handicapping games.
Oh, okay.
I find the market just extremely fascinating, you know, because you've got, we talk about baseball, we haven't really seen it in the KBO. I think at some point we probably will end up seeing it, but you talk about people that scalp and middle and trade and just, lock in profit on both sides of a game. And that stuff fascinates me, understanding, we look at the NFL this year specifically with the, COVID pandemic. What happens with home field advantage? How much is that actually worth?
Right.
How is it being accounted for in the market? And will people disagree? If home field advantage is cut, let's say theoretically in half because fans may not be there, is that too much? Is that too little? The market it never settles. And I think that's something that's really interesting to me. You get a closing number, but if you had an infinite period of time before a game, that market would just keep moving back and forth, back and forth. And I love that side of it. The market analysis and being able to have observations and convey those, I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do because I just love the market. It's so intriguing.
Well, I think you might be onto something here, and this could be a little bit of a pioneering movement because as of right now, there's always parts of sports betting that are evolving or different parts of it that we're looking at and trying to figure out further. But I think this specific dynamic of sports betting and handicapping, that being the market, the analysis, and the the watching of the market, it's always been a staple and an undertone prevalent for sports bettors, I think. But I think it's going to be a more commonality for all of the people, from the most prime of degenerates all the way down to the beginners. I think that market research and understanding that, I think other than like bankroll management and stuff, I think you're going to start probably seeing that pop up as far as like a component of like crash course, maybe sports betting, sports handicap stuff to come, just with the modernization of the world right now. And then just, where sports betting is with, local shops opening up everywhere for all these people. Colorado just went live. Chicago is trying to put, the betting in stadiums, and just around me, we got Illinois, Iowa's got books up. So, I think you're going to see that people are going to need to understand that they know that they not only need to research the card, but the market. And I think that's going to be, a component for sports betting and learning how to handicap here more publicly, I think, in the future.
And also, too, you had the Las Vegas market, and obviously Reno is kind of a market unto itself. It's very California-centric and whatnot. But you had the Las Vegas market, and then you had the global market. And the global markets didn't really have to deviate a whole lot from each other because, it was almost kind of one common belief. There's a lot of copycatting that goes on in the global market, as we know. There were some deviations, some variations, depending on risk tolerance or, groups that were playing at places with bigger limits, stuff like that. But now with, I think it's going to be 23 states by the end of the year. And in fact, Louisiana, just now, their state Senate has passed the sports gambling bill. I think it goes over to the House now. You can't have the same line in Massachusetts when they get going on the Patriots that you can have in let's say, Indiana, Iowa, West Virginia, Tennessee. Tennessee's going to be all online. You can't have the same line on the Titans in Tennessee that you have on the Titans in Michigan, because it's just from a balancing of your sheet standpoint. I guess that all kind of depends on, how these corporations set things up. Is it going to be, like for Caesars, for example, does everything funnel through Caesars in Las Vegas? They balance the sheet as a whole nationally as opposed to balancing the sheet on a state-by-state level. Same thing with a place like DraftKings. What do they do in terms of balancing their sheets? Do they shade a number in one state, not shade a number in another state? Well, then you run into, is that an ethical dilemma? The state-by-state thing, that really interests me. And Bang the Book is an offshore-facing site, so we are looking more at the global market as a whole. But I think as you continue to see this expansion of gambling, it's going to be really interesting to see how things go state to state to state. Obviously you're going to have people that are going to have runners in different states that can bet into, both sides of a line and stuff like that. It's going to be really fascinating. This is, literally when people say the tip of the iceberg, that's what we've got right now in the U.S. with sports betting. And I think that iceberg runs really, really deep under the surface too.
Yeah. Well, I think that tip of the iceberg is going to be what we know as, Vegas. That's the market that we're familiar with. And all the iceberg underneath the water, I think that's the market to come. That's the market that America is going to have because, like you said, by the end of the year, more than half the states, and I think by the end of next year, we'll probably have the other half pretty close. So I think, within the next year and a half, almost all of America is going to be understanding what it's like to be a little bit of a degenerate. So now, Adam, you talked about early on how you've always liked writing and how it's always been important and prevalent to you. So when did you first get your first sports writing break into the industry? What was that moment where you're like, all right, I'll probably be doing this for a living now?
Well, I was still in college, and I started writing for a Cleveland sports blog called The Cleveland Fan. And this was around the time that the Indians were putting together their own cable network called Sports Time Ohio. And we actually became one of the content providers for Sports Time Ohio. So, that was about the point in time that I started really getting into sabermetrics. And I kind of took it upon myself, and maybe this was arrogant of, 21, 22-year-old me. I kind of took it upon myself to sort of convey what sabermetrics were to the people that were on the message board, the readers, the people that were reading through the Cleveland or through Sports Time Ohio, stuff like that, because it's how the Indians front office operated. And I would always see people, criticizing decisions that they were making, stuff like that. And I'm like, look, there's a method to this madness. There is a reason why they are doing this. So that was kind of my start into, largely proving sports-related arguments and, just sports-related content in general. And then I would say 2010, with that Beyond the Bets forum, started doing a podcast, started doing some writing for them. They've since become the Betting Talk, offshoot of Right Angle Sports. But, I was doing the shows, doing the podcast actually with Matt Lindeman, who I referenced earlier. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to move to Vegas. I'm going to get in the industry. I'm going to be on the other side of the counter, at which point he couldn't do the podcast anymore, which, for obvious reasons.
Right.
So we were shutting down the podcast, and then the owner of Bang the Book actually emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, I listened to your show. I'm very impressed with what you were doing. You want to come and do something like that for me? And ever since then, just a cold email from Bang the Book. I think we've carved out a really nice niche here. I realize that we're a smaller fish in a very, very big pond, but we're a respected fish. And we've got a lot of, we've got a very loyal listener base, a loyal readership base. And I'm proud of that, especially because so much of this industry has grown over the 7 years I've been with them, that you've got mainstream media coverage now of sports betting, and people will still come to us. And I appreciate that. And I think it's been a really good spot for me. And we were one of the first to do a daily podcast format, and in fact, I was even doing 2 hours a day at one point. Getting 4 guests on for a half hour a day, pretty much. And it's you really have to love something to make it not just your 9 to 5, and believe me, I work more than 9 to 5. Right. Not just your 9 to 5, but also a nighttime activity of having bets live, sweating games, watching games to get observations, stuff like that.
Gaining data.
I've been very fortunate. I really have, and it's been something I've been doing now in terms of sports writing for about 15 years, and I don't know if it ever really stops. To be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm going to probably have to say I agree with you, from the little bit of that I've been doing. And I know you do a whole hell of a lot more than I do. But man, I could imagine. I'm not sure where you even found the time to be able to sit down with me for this, but that's so cool to hear that background. What year was that Bang the Book reached out to you? And please do remind the owner of Bang the Book's name. It's slipping my mind right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, my boss Ryan reached out to me. I want to say, like I said, I think it was about 2013, maybe it was late 2012. All the years run together at this point in time.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was. I started out. It was mostly the podcast, and then it sort of became something where I would do more and more writing with each passing week, and then it would be kind of looking more editing some of our other contributors' stuff, and just it really, quite frankly, I mean, I worked my way up to effectively being second in command there. And, it's something it's been nice to be able to work really closely, with the person that you call your boss. Not everybody has the opportunity to do that. And again, I think it just kind of speaks to sort of that, community type of feel here in the sports betting world, in the sense that everybody kind of knows everybody, or at least everyone's aware of everybody. And, for the longest time, it was a pretty insulated, almost niche market. And now that it's becoming mainstream, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, it's been, I would say it's probably been about 7-8 years ago now, about springtime.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that for you. Bang the Book's been one of my bookmarked websites for a couple years at least now. So it's, I love it. I appreciate the content that you guys do, and it's real user-friendly. And Hoop Ballers, if you've not ever been to bangthebook.com, you are doing yourself a disservice. Again, I am with Adam Burke, lead writer of bangthebook.com. He is joining us today. This is, again, Today in Sports Betting, Hoop Ball presentation. And you'll find Adam on Twitter at Skating Tripod. You'll find myself at DALE007. And then you can find this here mothership, Hoopball Gaming, at Hoopball Gaming. So, Adam, want to transition to a little bit of the KBO here real quick. We've got some new series that started last night. I know we've talked a little bit off camera about it as far as our thoughts. And I was curious, did your original love of baseball, like you've talked a little bit about it so far on the show now, I think you and I can agree that we both love baseball. It's just kind of in our blood, being where you're from. So I'm curious as to, did your original love of baseball help you in the viewership and programming yourself for the intake of the KBO? Or was it an easy transition for you just because it is baseball? Or is this something that you told yourself, okay, this is the sports that we have, I have to do this? Was it a have to, or was it like this is baseball?
I think it was probably a little bit of both. I mean, it was one of those things where, look, I mean, obviously with the lockdown, everybody's traffic's down a little bit. And, I was kind of looking at that and thinking, okay, I've got to come up with something that, can maybe set us apart from other people. And I do feel like I am kind of at the beginning stages of jumping into the KBO, and a lot of people have kind of followed suit now. But, there's only so many people that want to bet horse racing. There's only so many people that are going to bet UFC. And really, for the longest time, we had virtually nothing except for horse racing going on. So it was a pretty easy transition. I mean, I'm, again, like I said, I've got that, history major background. So I'm pretty good at sort of picking up cues and kind of running with them. So my biggest concern going into the KBO was, how much can I actually find about this?
Right.
I mean, I've watched clips. I've watched the bat flips. I've, certainly paid attention to the players that have come over from the KBO to the major leagues. But, what about this league itself? Because there were a lot of things that I didn't know about the KBO going into it. I didn't know that high schoolers made the jump right from senior year to playing in the KBO. I didn't know that, that the ball had been de-juiced last year, and that home runs were, dramatically decreased, I think by about 40%. The fact that games went from about 11 runs per game to 9.1 runs per game. Those were all things I kind of had to pick up on. And then as I'm looking at the individual player statistics, specifically on the pitcher side, I start formulating a plan. I start thinking to myself, okay, which stats really matter here? Because for Major League Baseball, it's almost exclusively sabermetrics for me. Mm-hmm. For the KBO, not a whole lot of sources out there for sabermetrics. There are a few sites that do track them. Obviously, I can't read Korean, so I'm relying on Google Translate to help me out with that. Yeah. But just sort of trying to figure out what I can isolate to maybe get some kind of an edge in this league. And, to this point, it's been, pretty 50-50, kind of treading water right now while we're all kind of going through the process of figuring everything out. The bullpens are abhorrent in this league, which is, very different from the major leagues. But it was an easy transition because, I love baseball. I've always been on the statistical analysis side of baseball. And at its core, this is baseball. It's just that you have to adapt to the data that you're being given and, sort of make your inferences and your judgments from there. And, I've been it's been pretty well received overall, which I'm kind of surprised about. But, it's a betting market. And if you can find an edge and if there's a chance to make money there, people are going to be interested in it. And hopefully that's what happens here with the KBO going forward.
I've for sure enjoyed it, so far. It's
different, right?
It's different, very.
You get this. You mentioned that you're doing writing, you're doing this show. It can get monotonous. By the time that football season is about over, as much as I love football, as much as I love college football, I'm kind of ready for it to end.
Yeah.
And that was something I kind of thought about early on with the KBO is that for Major League Baseball, I had just finished my MLB guide. I was in Vegas for a week in February promoting it on different radio shows, did an hour in studio with VSiN. I did some stuff with Wager Talk, things of that sort. Like, I was so jacked up for baseball to start, and it was the same way last year, but I went to Vegas to promote the guide. I'm flying home on opening day. I'm burned out on baseball by the time the season even started last year for the major leagues.
Yeah.
But this year, I get to do the KBO. It's something different. It's something that you have to be more engaged with. You don't take anything for granted because you don't really know anything.
Yeah.
And that really helped me kind of get focused on the KBO. And quite frankly, I kind of enjoyed it more than I've enjoyed the prep work for really any of the major North American sports that we handicap day in and day out.
Yeah, I was having some fun with some spreadsheets the first week of the season. I was just trying to track some numbers, like you said, finding those key statistics that are going to help finding a decent betting market. So, it's just a matter of trying to find that bank of information as well as your own personal eye tests and watching some of these teams. I've still been trying to figure the viewership tactic out. Do I power through the whole evening and just, stay up as best as I can and watch the first 6 innings? Or do I tail off for a little bit, take fall asleep at, like 10, 11, midnight, set an alarm for, 3:30 in the morning to check lineups, maybe doze off a little bit for another hour, wake back up, watch the game. I'm still trying to figure that out. I haven't really mastered it. So I've been fading in about the 6th and 7th inning the last couple games. So I need to reconfigure my viewing strategy.
Judging by the bullpens, it's probably the right time to fall asleep, truthfully.
Yeah. Unless I want to see all the KBO-ness, all the 10-run innings and the crazy bat flips and offensive numbers. And there's some really cool stuff that this league offers. I know that Hideki Matsui and Ichiro Suzuki are both Japanese-born players, but those guys were pretty prevalent for me growing up as a youth, and that always helped me appreciate and understand the Korean and, just Asian culture in the game. And so when this league was able to have the platform it has now in America because of the time that we're in, I've always liked that defensive hitting, the, staying alive, the fundamentals on the infield, just the way that they play the game that the professionals in America don't, because they are a lot more talented and raw, and they don't really have to do all those other little things as hard as or as well as the Korean and Japanese players do. But I just love their mindset. I love their philosophies, the way they hit, the defensive side of the ball. So, yeah, this is I'm excited to see how it comes to be. And if this is something that after this is going to have a little bit of a market in America. Maybe it carved out a little, if you will, cult following for America. So
I agree with you. And, something else too, you think back to like the World Baseball Classic, for example, and, I know there was supposed to be one next year. I think it's already been canceled or it's certainly going to be. But when you watch the emotion that these different countries and their players play with, I mean, even the major league guys from the Dominican or Puerto Rico or whatever else, I mean, they get neutered in Major League Baseball because they're afraid of getting thrown at, or they don't want to disrespect the game or whatever else. I mean, look, I don't know, maybe it's my old age, maybe I'm getting emotional, but Francisco Lindor hitting that home run in Puerto Rico, it's a regular season game. But, I mean, that moment and that crowd, I'm actually getting chills sitting here talking about it. Yeah. I mean, those moments are just in such short supply in Major League Baseball. And it's one thing that I don't like is that if any sport needs to brand its players, it's that one. And when you see the emotion, I mean, when you see the bat flips, I mean, dude flips his bat, picks it up rounding third to take it back to the dugout after a home run. In Major League Baseball, your entire team would get thrown at. Yeah. It's just make the game fun. And that's what the KBO is. It's fun. It's business for those guys. They're obviously getting paid to play. But you can tell that, I mean, they have fun. They show their emotions. They do all the same things that, all of us wish we could do as athletes. If I could hit a ball 500 feet, I'd bat flip the hell out of every one of them. It's a different kind of game. It's a different speed. And is the gameplay as good? No, not at all. I wouldn't expect it to be. But it's the emotion that I would love to see from Major League Baseball. And that's a refreshing change of pace because, look, as a gambler, you're naturally pessimistic. I mean, all of us are. It's, I wake up in the morning and check KBO scores, and my first thought is, how did I lose? How did my game lose? Which bullpen melted down to cause me to lose a bet? It's I don't know. It was a breath of fresh air to do something with the KBO and to be able to follow it. Because again, you can become very immune to a lot of things in sports if that's what you do on a daily basis. And not to get too long-winded here, but people always say that to me all the time of, oh, you get to cover sports for a living. Yeah, but I also can't come home from work, crack a beer, watch a game, and not give a damn about anything.
You're invested in some aspect of it in some way.
Right. It changes the way that you view the game. And to some level, it does take some of the fun and some of the emotion out of it. And seeing it in the KBO, even with action on it, I don't know, it almost has a childlike sense to it that, I've kind of missed for a while.
Yeah. Funny that you brought that up. Real quick, though, I want to backtrack slightly because you were talking about, the fact of enjoying this and, trying to figure out, how to not be such a pessimistic like all of us are as bettors. But I wake up and do the same thing, especially if I know, let's see, if I had a bet or two placed in the Doosan game or something, it's just like, they score a ton of runs, but, did they give up 13 in the 8th again? So with that being said, I think I've found myself transitioning a little bit more into I'll do some first 5 innings a lot more from what I've been seeing, especially involving Doosan, because they have decent starting pitching. They once that starter goes out, they watch out. They're going to probably allow a 10 spot. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you, we've talked about the bullpens, what you don't like about the KBO so far, and you've talked a little bit about what you do like as far as the lightheartedness, making it fun, the culture, just, the league in itself. What do you think you would say, if you had to pick one thing or two, I'll let you pick two. What parts of the KBO, would you say that you enjoy the most? Is it that fun aspect, the bat flips, what is it?
I think the one thing that I enjoy the most is I enjoy handicapping the domestic starting pitchers, the South Korean-born guys, because, look, I mean, history has told us, and I mean, this has been proven in the KBO, that guys that were AAA level players in the major leagues can go over to the KBO and basically be superstars. I mean, they're going to be the 2 or 3 best players on the team. And where I've found an edge and where I think I've found some pretty good opportunity in the KBO is handicapping these domestic starting pitchers, finding the guys that are in the right age range to break out. And I've kind of found that for the high school guys, about 21, 22 is where they kind of figure out their crafts. So when they're 22, 23 years old and I'm seeing improvement, I don't think the market necessarily accounts for that, because the odds makers, even though there's not much going on, they're not deep diving into the KBO the way that people that are betting on it are. And that's true of any sport. They don't have the time to deep dive. They're worried about managing risk, balancing the books, all that kind of thing. So I've really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed being able to look at a guy like Koo Chang Mo, who I think is going to be in the major leagues in very short order. I think he's 23 years old, already having that breakout season here. He's going to be in the major leagues very, very quickly. You've got some of the other guys that are out there that, maybe went the college route and their first seasons weren't very good. And people are going to look and say, well, this guy's 24 and his KBO body of work so far isn't any good. I'm going to fade him, or I'm going to bet the over here. And that's a pitcher that, just took more time to develop. A guy that came out of college at 23, 24, where other guys are coming out of high school at 18, 19. And that's something I've really enjoyed, getting to know the personnel that I didn't previously know. And then another part of it is, just sort of looking at the lineups and looking at the domestic hitters that have been really, really good. The guys that haven't come over, like a Hyun-Soo Kim or Byung-Ho Park, the guys that haven't come over to the major leagues would have carved out incredible careers over in Korea, almost kind of the, Crash Davis type thing to reference Bull Durham, where these guys are exceptional for their talent levels. They just weren't going to be able to come over to the major leagues and hack it. And, you get some good opportunities playing on underrated offenses. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to focus on here is everyone knows that scoring is up at this point in time. So the lines are adjusting on starting pitchers. The totals are adjusting up. I think getting more of a handle on the domestic players, the South Korean-born guys, is something I'm trying to work on as I get more sample size of the current run environment. And that's been my favorite part so far is learning about some of these guys. And then, in 3-4 years when Koo Chang Mo is, somebody's number 3 starter in the major leagues, it's almost like I love music. I'm a huge music fan. I like a lot of independent country artists. I go to a lot of shows where I may be one of 15 or 20 people there. I want that moment where I've seen somebody in a small venue and then all of a sudden they're headlining big arenas in 10 years. Right. And I can say, oh, yeah, I saw that guy back before anybody knew him. I kind of want that with the KBO, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. You do have a good eye for it. I'm sure you're aware of that. The point you made about the age range, I really, really liked when you initially talked about that point on one of your podcasts within the last couple days. I think it was a couple days ago that you were talking about that. And that was a really decent piece of information, just an angle that I had never really given any consideration to. I knew that those kids are coming out of high school a lot, but I didn't understand the threshold of that age 21, 22 season. Like I didn't see that, that click or that turnover that you were referencing to. So, I appreciate you pointing that out for me. One of the other things that I've really enjoyed is getting to know the 19, 20-year-old veterans that have been on the same teams. I want to say the Kia Tigers has they've got this I can't remember his name, so I apologize, but he's a left-handed batter, a little bit of a bigger guy, and he's been with them his whole career, about 17 years now. And then I want to say the KT Wiz also have a guy been with them 19, 20 years now. You've probably seen him, but he looks like a dad. He wears the basic bifocal, like his 80s readers. Like they're not the cool athletic glasses. He gets up to the plate and he's got these thin framed, large lens, 1980s dad glasses, and he's had a 20-year career in the KBO, and he's a really good hitter. I can't remember his name. I wish I did, but he's talked about every broadcast I watched, and he's just kind of like it's like he's the dad of the KBO is what I'm hearing. Kind of like what Poppy became in the later end of his career. He's just kind of this presence for the league, kind of like an elderly, fatherly kind of thing. So it's been cool learning culturally and historically, about the teams, what franchises started when, who's newer, and what's your take on the I think you prefaced it, but what's your take on the ball probably being juiced this year that they didn't tell the players and stuff?
Yeah, it certainly seems like it's rejuiced again. And realistically speaking, I mean, I'm sure they were already putting together the baseballs long before they realized that, Major League Baseball wasn't going to be around.
Yeah.
It may work out really well for them because now all of a sudden you're going to have these big, high-scoring games, these home runs, all these bat flips that are going to go viral on social media and all that. It may actually work out really well for them. I think it's one of those things where, you've got a league that needs to be predicated on hitting. I think watching 1-0 games is kind of difficult, and it would have a very centralized appeal. I think if you want to be a league that's recognized, globally, or at least, throughout all of Asia, knowing that you've got to go up against, Taiwan and Japan and some of the other nations that are over there, maybe you need a juiced baseball. And what really drove the point home for me, you can see it statistically. Obviously, home runs are way up. But I saw from, I think it was Daniel Kim on Twitter, who actually had quotes from the players and said, this is different.
The ball is different.
Last year, we couldn't even hit a home run in batting practice.
Right.
Now everything's leaving the ballpark.
Yeah.
The players know. The players will tell you. Even pitchers, with the change to the Major League Baseball, it feels different to them. It's just like anything else with repetition. When something's off a little bit. I know when my keyboard is off a little bit, just from the volume of writing I'll do during college football season or something.
Right.
You just know those things. You just pick up on those things. Hitters know, pitchers know. It seems to be pretty definitive. We've seen the adjustments in the totals market already. We're starting to see some 11 totals pop up out there. I think we may even start to go higher than that in some of the games with 2 domestic starting pitchers. And, I don't know if there will be any changes throughout the course of the season to the ball. I think kind of what you see is what you get. And right now what we get is a baseball that appears to be rejuiced. And, I've had to kind of account for that too, because you start looking at these pitchers and you start trying to look at maybe a 3 or 5 year sample, especially as you mentioned, guys that have played in this league for 15 years. There's some variance in their numbers. Well, last year, pitchers were giving up fewer home runs. Their ERAs were lower. They were doing a lot better in terms of run prevention. So you've got to go back to 2017 and 2018 because that looks like the environment that we're in now. It's hard to throw out last year's sample size of data, but we may get to that point as we continue seeing how the baseball plays.
That's a really good point to make. The ultimate watch his 2018, not his 2019 film saying from the scouting viewership there. Well, Adam, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. We've been talking to KBO here for the last few minutes now. I wanted to transition and see if, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. Wanted to see if, there was something coming up here soon that you were excited for, maybe something that you're doing some digging or research on. Maybe you want to pull the curtain back a little bit and let us know if you've got anything fun and exciting going on for Bang the Book coming up. I mean, tease us a little bit here, Adam.
We're starting to get, I guess, back to some level of normal I would say. I've been doing horse racing previews over at bangthebook.com. I've really enjoyed that. Again, just something that kind of deviates from the norm. I like horse racing. I've always been a fan. We got a track here in the Cleveland area called Thistledown. 75, 80 degrees on a Saturday. I'll rip through 3, 4, 5 Coors Light pints, watch racing for 4 or 5 hours, and head on home. I've really enjoyed doing that. I got a preview up of a horse race for Friday. I know this won't be up in time, but I've been previewing some of the big weekend stakes races, the Kentucky Derby prep races. That whole calendar has been shifted around. The Santa Anita Derby's coming up June, I don't know, whatever the second Saturday in June is. I'll have a preview up for that. I did a preview for the TaylorMade Driving Relief golf event this weekend. You got Rory and DJ against Matthew Wolff and Ricky Fowler. I think there's some good betting opportunities with that. Just trying to cover some different things from what I usually cover. I mean, I usually cover golf over there, but never really done the skins game format or anything like that. It's not even just a matter of trying to keep busy. It's the opportunity to handicap some markets that I typically don't dive into all that much. And I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to the horse racing calendar over the summer. And, man, am I hoping the fall looks like it's supposed to. All the golf majors, college football comes back, NFL, Triple Crown,
we're not going to know
whatever's left of that season. The fall's going to be insane. And
we're not going to know what to watch.
Really hoping we get everything that we're currently being promised.
That's going to be one of the most conflicting, bittersweet times for a sports fan if that ends up happening, because you're just going to have to – I mean, there's times during a regular college basketball season I'm torn between if I want to watch this game or that game of, small schools or whatever. So I could imagine if there's like multiple major events going on, if the NBA comes back when it's gonna, you'll still have the tail end of the playoffs, or early parts of the season, depending on what type or what kind or part of the fall we're talking about here. The overlapping that you mentioned is just going to be, there's potential that we have the World Series going on at the same time of other sporting playoffs and other big events and races and so it's the rest of the year is just going to be a little bit weird, and I think that we probably just need to embrace it as best as we can and hope for the most content as possible. And so far, looking forward, the foreseeable future, it's pretty optimistic looking.
Seems that way. And, I know that I know you like the NBA quite a bit. I'm really curious to see if the NBA officially makes that change and starts the season in December, if this can be, kind of a guinea pig type season for that, avoiding football. What that means for us gamblers is pretty interesting. You're going to have paralysis by overanalysis of every weekend of, college football and NFL if you're not distracted by something else during the week. But that makes sense for the NBA. You don't only go up against baseball for, April, May, June, and the NHL, I guess. But, for April, May, June, all of a sudden you're playing your finals right before football season. This, as awful as all of this is, and believe me, it certainly is, the chances for the leagues to kind of experiment a little bit here with some changes to their timelines, changes to their schedules, changes to roster size, stuff like that. Over the long term, I mean, this could benefit several sports leagues. And, obviously it's trying to draw a silver lining from something that's just absolutely terrible. But that is something that I'm kind of interested in watching because, it could make my life easier from a writing standpoint for a while, or it could make it harder. I don't know. But I think that a lot of these leagues have been status quo for too long, and maybe trying something different could make a lot of sense for them.
This is definitely a chance at modernization for a lot of these, especially the MLB being as old as it is. For me, I am a purist with the game. There's a lot of baseball stuff I want to remain true. But, I mean, let's be honest. 1890s was a long time ago. Yep. So there are some little logistical new age, just everyday Americano business, just logistics that, there are some minor tweaks that some of these leagues could probably afford to go ahead and implement. Well, Adam, I know you're a busy man. This is going to be the part of the show where I'm just going to go ahead and wrap stuff up here. Say thank you again. I'm going to remind folks again where they can find you at Skating Tripod on Twitter, at bangthebook.com. Do you put any other content out on any other platforms?
No, just Bang the Book for now. We got my KBO betting podcast, The Bettor's Box, every Monday and Thursday. And then on Tuesdays, I chat with Brian Blessing, who, ironically enough, I watched when I was in high school when he was doing Buffalo Sabres pre- and post-game stuff. So that's pretty cool for me every Tuesday to chat with him. And we just kind of riff about whatever's going on in the sports world, different sports events, stuff like that. And then once football comes back around, and hopefully it does, we'll be back to 5 days a week with the podcast. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to navigating whatever we get here out of the summer, but hoping that the fall, as we just talked about, is kind of back to normal a little bit.
Sure. Well, nonetheless, I'm excited for what content you're putting out for Bang the Book. I know you guys do some great stuff. And again, Hoopballers, if you are not, you've got to follow Adam at Skating Tripod on Twitter. You've got to check Bang the Book out. They don't charge for picks. It's just such a good home feeling website. I remember there were so many times when I was starting off and I needed like a good, just a piece of information, just a little nugget or a stat of something to help me feel better about a bet or a DFS angle, and bam, it was right there on Bang the Book. It was what I needed. So check them out, guys. It's some second to none work. Adam, I can't thank you again enough. And with this being said, it's an interworked community. All like you said, a little bit of full circleness. You're doing that Buffalo Sabres hangout on Tuesdays for the hockey stuff with the guy that you watch for a long time now. So this industry is pretty intertwined, and I'm just happy to start becoming a part of it as well. So, and I thank you for helping me be a part of that and being cordial enough to come on to Today in Sports Betting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been an honor to be here. And, I love hearing stuff like that. I love when I get emails, people reach out and say, I've listened to you for a long time. You've helped me with this. You helped me with that. And I mean, that's why I do it, because, a long time ago, way back when, somebody was there to help me figure it all out. And hopefully I can do that for somebody else. And I appreciate the kind words, Devin, and I appreciate the support, reading the stuff and listening to the show too. Because, without the listeners and the readers, I wouldn't have anything to do. So I'm very thankful to each and every one that's out there, and you especially here for having me on your show.
Absolutely, Adam. Well, hey, hopefully this is something we can do a little bit down the road. I'd love to maybe pick your brain, especially if we get some normalcy back for football. I think that'd be pretty fun. Absolutely. And then maybe some American baseball. Maybe we can talk some MLB down the road. I've got the Indians as one of my dark horse teams this year, so maybe we can maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sounds good to me.
Adam, with that, I bid you adieu. Hoopballers, I bid you adieu. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Again, this is Devin Ellington at DAELE007 on Twitter. And then this is a Hoopball presentation, hoop-ball.com. Check it out. We got Hoopball Clippers, Hoopball Lakers, Hoopball Pelicans, Hoopball Grizzlies. If there's a basketball team out there you need some information on, it's probably going to be within the Hoopball family. Adam, one last thank you. A huge, huge shout out to you. And to the listeners. Today was great. It was a wonderful Friday. I can't thank you enough. I hope to hear from you soon, bud.
Absolutely, man. I'd be glad to be back anytime.
All right. Thank you, Adam. You have a great weekend, boss.
You too.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.